live a life in the city of gold. He'd left it but nobody know. Gone were the towers he had known from a child, along with the dream of a life. He travelled the wide open road, the blinkered arcade, in search of another to share in his life. No, everyone looked so strange to him. They got no horns and they got no tail. They don't even know of our existence. Am I wrong to believe in the city of gold? It lies in deep distance. They cried and wept as they led him away to a cage. Beasts that can talk read the sign.
I think Trick of the Tail was an important album because it was more transitional in the way, kind of reshuffled, different people writing. And I think what I remember about that is going into Trick of the Tail, which is the first one without Peter, slightly apprehensive. Because we all thought, well, we felt confident, we thought we were going to, but there was a question mark there, you know, as to how the writing would go.
Holy mighty God, you got to go faster than that to get to the top. Dirty old mountain, all covered in snow. She can turn you to stone. You better start doing it right. You better start doing it right. Halfway down, come back on your back, it's turning you around, throw it away, you don't need it up there, but remember, you don't know whatever you do, you better start doing it right, alright, you better start doing it right.
It seems so obvious now, doesn't it? You know, you had a singer in the group and everything already. But, you know, I mean, Peter had all sorts of things that sort of came with him, and it was just like thinking of Phil. I don't know, I mean, I wasn't sure. Phil always had a lovely voice for sort of soft stuff, but he had no ability, at the time he'd never sung anything hard at all. You know, we had no idea how he'd cope with a hard song, really.
I was the last person that anybody thought I was going to sing. I'd always been singing with the band, and I'd always done the backups on the albums. I've always felt the singer was the cheapest gig in the band, because all they had to do was look good and wiggle their bum. That's the way I used to look at singers. And so I never wanted to be a singer. I always wanted the most respectable gig in the group, which was, of course, the drummer, you know. I felt that the drummer was the goalkeeper of the group. It was, you could have a bad band with a good drummer and it would still sound good. So when he left and we started to get singers down, I used to stand there and teach them the melody, you know. We used to audition these people every Monday for I don't know how many weeks. Felt like an eternity. And then my first wife at the time, you know, she said, why don't you become the singer? And the thought horrified me of coming out from behind the drum kit, you know, and wiggling my bum and sort of doing everything that I said I wouldn't do. So anyway, I suggested this to Tony and Mike and Steve, and they were very surprised at my suggestion, and they also were a bit dubious as to whether I'd better carry it off or not.
The path is clear, though now eyes can see. The course laid down long before. And so gods and men, the sheep remain inside their pen, though many times they've seen the way to lead. He rides majestic past rows of men who cannot or gaze with joy.
The first gig was strange because I've been so used to just looking up and seeing Peter there, and I got a certain confidence of seeing
You had to
Peter
look down,
there.
then, didn't you?
Yes, I feel like I was looking down. You're right. And it just seemed so funny. And it also, you just didn't know really how the audience were going to react because you thought that they were going to miss him and everything, miss Peter, I mean. And it was very strange. About halfway through the show, I suddenly realised this was going to work. I mean, he had his own approach to the audience, but they sort of seemed to like him, you know, which was curious, you know.
Well, it's maybe talk about it in third person, actually, just sitting here.
Yeah, it's like,
I remember London, Ontario was the gig, and I just remember being more worried about what I was going to say to the audience than anything else, because Peter did have was a communication, and although it was more of a mysterious traveller than a bloke next door or a mate, he did communicate with an audience, and I thought that was very important. So I was more concerned about that aspect of it working than actually singing the song.
We're going to try, together, all of us, to levitate the entire Wembley Stadium complex. Everybody hands in the air. Now the next thing is everybody go with me. Come on, come on. I think I felt something moving. Yes, I think something's happening.
I think because Phil had come from within the group, I think people were very forgiving. And also, in fact, I think musically the band sounded better than ever.
Angels never know it's time to close the book and gracefully decline. The song has found a tale. My, what a jealous fool is she. The face in the water looks up. She shakes her head as if to say that the blue girls have all gone away.
Although they're rarely in the hit parade, Genesis are a supergroup, one of perhaps 5 groups in the world that always sell out, one of the few bands that can even fill the huge American halls. The millions of fans are there for more than just the sound. 200 jumbo jet lights change exactly to the music. The special effects would make a Hollywood mogul proud. The amplifiers are loud enough to drive 10,000 neighbours wild.
In America, it was rather difficult because we had a biggish shows. We happened to play sort of fairly biggish places, but getting tiny audiences in them. And of course, that's a recipe for disaster. You're losing money left, right, and centre.
You might not have heard of them, but they have a massive following among the young that take rock music seriously.
There's the one year, though, that we found out afterwards that one of our 19-year-old road managers was managing us for a year, and we spent everything we'd earned. But of course, he hadn't kept any receipts, and so that was quite a big blow. Adrian?
Imagine approaching the taxman after a US tour that lost a fortune, you know, genuinely, but obviously did earn quite a lot at the same time. And he had a couple of garage receipts and one hotel.
Looking for someone.
Tony Smith promoted the band's first major tour in 1973. He uncovered the extent of their financial and technical disarray.
First date was in Glasgow, and I arrived up in Glasgow to see them, and total chaos on the stage, absolute chaos. And finally, we had to cancel the show because they had something like 400 volts of electricity running through every single piece of equipment on the stage. We could not walk on the stage. And I had to cancel the show in Glasgow, which is not the easiest of places to cancel shows.
you want to go on the bus, or are you going to go to the Mayfair and pick up the bus, or are you going to drive all the way out there?
I mean, yeah,
The Mayfair's very nice.
it may be, but
Drive
a
up to
little bit
London.
quicker than your bus can.
Drive all the way to London.
the traffic.
It's very nice.
So,
Pretty.
Get stuck nowhere to work.
Towards the end of the tour, they came to me and said, well, you know, you're saying we should get a manager, why don't you do it? So I said, okay. And that's when my trouble started.
So,
well, as long as it all, you know, I'm not being argumentative. I'm just saying there's no point in us,
for the sake of it,
in us being there. If we have to do something, then we have to make sure we're there in time to do it. We've always argued and discussed, and that's why you're in a group. And if you don't like that, you leave groups. Peter left, and Steve left for different reasons.
Dark and grey, an English film, the Wednesday play. We always watch the Queen on Christmas Day. Won't you stay?
It was funny because he just didn't turn up one day when we were doing the mixing of Seconds Out, I suppose it was. Yes, the live album, you know. So he didn't turn up, so we mixed him out of the rest of the album, and that was it, really. No, he just, I don't know, I wasn't really expecting it, actually. I was kind of surprised, because on Wind and Wuthering, I felt he did some of the best writing contribution he'd ever done for us.
I managed to let off steam by doing a solo album, which was successful. And it created a difficult situation within the band because the band perceived it as a threat. So there was pressure on me to give up the solo career. And I said, fine, okay, provided a percentage of what I do is done by the band, and the band said, well, we don't really do things like that. We do it by committee. So it was a very difficult decision, and it took me over 2 years of agonizing about that decision, but I felt that the band was no longer a healthy musical climate for me.
I always felt that Steve's strong point was as a guitarist, strongest point, I think, more than as a writer. And I don't know if he ever really could see it that way in a sense, but I mean, he had some very original sounds and an original way of playing.
In the studio, Genesis had shrunk to 3, but for live performances they drew on outside talent. In 1977, the ex-Weather Report drummer Chester Thompson was recruited, and in the following year, top American guitarist Darryl Sturmer joined the band.
Stay with me, my love. I hope you'll always be right here by my side. If ever I need you, oh my love, in your arms I feel so safe and so secure. Every day is such a perfect day to spend along with you. I will follow you. Will you follow me?
Then there were 3 was a very pleasurable experience, which was the first album when it was a 3-piece. You had one guy who sort of sang and drums, another guy who did all the guitars and basses, and another guy who did all the keyboard work, which even at that stage was starting to be quite an expansive role because it would sort of go into the world of drums and guitars and things quite a bit. And I think between us we felt very complete, you know, certainly from the point of view of a studio band.
Nacquero sul finire degli anni 60 per iniziativa di due aristocratici studenti inglesi.
Follow You, Follow Me was the first hit single we had, and it sort of doubled the sale of the album. I think also being a romantic song, and we weren't known for romantic songs, the main difference in our audience is suddenly it became a lot more females came to see the group.
Before that, it was just spotty guys with fishing hats and long coats that wanted your album. Can you sign this, Phil? You know, that's really was that. I mean, Genesis fans in the 70s were, you know, college students, and they were mainly guys. It was a very masculine band. We used to play songs that were actually a bit too demanding for some of the females of the audience. I don't mean that sounds chauvinistic, you know, but just that they wanted something else, and we weren't giving it to them. There was a young girl that used to follow us around everywhere, from Watford, who was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And we all our times were hanging out, but she never ended up going with anybody. She was just a big fan of the music, you know. But no, I'm afraid we didn't rape and pillage our way across the world. Yet. I really genuinely thought that the punk thing was a good idea, you know, or not a good idea, it was a good thing that it happened, because it was like someone shaking a tree and all these things that fell off, all these bands that fell off like bad apples, you know. I mean, I didn't hate them, you know, I'm just saying that I would personally prefer to have been stuck on a desert island with a Sam and Dave album, or an Otis Redding album, or Aretha Franklin, down a Pink Floyd record or a Yes record, you know. That's what I was listening to.
Many too many have stood where I stand.
See, most of the bands that were being slagged off as being dinosaurs and boring, I thought were boring as well. And so when someone else comes along and says, all that lot are rubbish, they're all crap, and all boring old farts, you know, I'm saying, yeah, they are actually, you know. And then suddenly we're mentioned in the same mouthful. I think, well, that's a drag, you know, because I saw different things in our music.
Leave the stage. Maybe that's because you securely locked me up and threw away the key. On my mind, please would you find a key? Open my mind, because you let me go free.
I stopped reading it now, actually. I've stopped reading press because it's too depressing.
Must be some kind of mistake.
I think anyone who says that they don't care is kidding themselves, really. It's natural to want everyone to like you. I think what was tough was in those early days, it's changed now, thank God, the music papers, the three, the Melody Maker, the NME, and the Sounds it was, that was about all there was, you know, in England. And if they didn't like you, then you really were in trouble.
There must be some misunderstanding.
If you wanted to get a good review of a Genesis album, it can't be that difficult. There are an awful lot of people out there who like us, so it must be possible to find them.
From all the Genesis fan club, I mean, an enormous number of people all over Europe, really, yeah. I don't know if you can see this. Happy Easter from all the Genesis fan clubs. It's rather nice.
Fabulous.
Looks very nice. I don't quite know what it is. But
Feel that.
Really nice.
good grief! It's oh no! I can't do. You're supposed to be the blackest fiend in the cosmos. Go out there and frighten people. There go the boys.
Must be some kind of mistake.
we've never been fashionable, you know. The only time we ever became remotely fashionable was when Peter left, and we were the underdogs. I find it frustrating that you can't get back at these people. And a lot of the abuse nowadays, or in recent history, has come from on personal matters, you know, about what I look like, as opposed to what the music's like, you know. And I kind of find that very, very frustrating.
NME was interesting because it was so vicious, you know, and it wasn't just vicious to us, it was vicious to hundreds of people.
One of the things that the criticism that's been levelled at us from our own fans, as well as everybody else, has been the fact that we are now having hit singles wherever they are, being in whatever country of the world, and we've sort of sold out, you know. I don't think we have sold out at all. Our music is just reaching more people because more people like it. More people are playing it on the radio. We've always written 3 or 4 minute songs, but people never played them on the radio because they figured that we were an albums group, you know. And also they probably weren't very good 3 or 4 minute songs, some of them, so they probably didn't deserve to be played, I don't know. But we've always tried to write singles, we've always tried to do that, and now we're just doing it better, I suppose.
The release of Duke in 1980 signalled a new and more commercial era. The success of shorter and more accessible songs scotched rumours that the band were disintegrating and spending too much time on solo projects.
People still come up to me and they say, "Are you breaking up?" You know. And they still can't understand that it's possible to do more than one thing musically. You know, if you think about it, being in a group's actually a bit unhealthy. Once you've got past the initial sort of 5 years, and just to get the group going and get playing together. It's a strange life, the idea of just you play with 3 or 4 other guys and that's all you